Hi, my name is Sara Wolkenfeld, and I teach for the July Beit Midrash at Trisha. This summer, I taught a continuing education class called Multitasking and Mitzvot. In this class, we examined a concept formulated by Chazal, which states Osek B'mitzvah patur min mitzvah, that one who is involved in a mitzvah, already involved in a mitzvah, is exempt from becoming involved with another mitzvah opportunity, should it come your way. And the Gemara that we looked at examines the derivation of this concept, which actually comes from a verse. The Gemara gives two sources, but one of the sources comes from a verse in this week's Parashat Va'etchanan. The verse may be familiar to you. We also recite it when we recite the Shema each day. And the verse reads as follows. It's from Deuteronomy 6:7. You should teach your children, you should be involved with the words of Torah, involved with mitzvot, basically at all times. That's the straightforward reading of the verse. When you are walking, when you're traveling, when you're sitting, when you're standing, at all times, in your house, out of your house, you should be involved with mitzvot. The Gemara, however, presents a somewhat counterintuitive reading of this verse and argues that the way that the words are framed in this pasuk, when you are sitting in your house, and when you are going on your way, the Gemara argues that that means that the obligation to be involved with the words of God applies only when you are doing something which is your own, only when you're involved in your own thing. So if you're doing something that is optional, davar shel reshut, something that you want to do, then the words of God are incumbent upon you. You have to do mitzvot. However, if you are already involved in something that is not your own, that is in fact God's, meaning you're involved in mitzvot already, then this obligation is not incumbent upon you. And from here we learn the rule, Osek B'mitzvah patur min mitzvah, that one who is already involved in a mitzvah is exempt from another mitzvah. But what about the possibility of doing two things at once? As a 21st century multitasker, I might argue that it's always possible to do more than one thing at a time. And in fact, in this class, we looked at this concept through the eyes of a 21st century multitasker who believes that it's almost always possible to do more than one thing at a time. Many of the Rishonim, many of the classical commentaries, discuss this possibility that in fact, many mitzvot are passive, many mitzvot don't require our full active presence in order to fulfill them, and so perhaps it should be possible to do more than one mitzvah at a time. And halachic decisors also debate the exact application of this rule. Perhaps it's not always the case that we ignore all other mitzvah opportunities when we're involved in one mitzvah, and perhaps it's not always the case that we cannot do two or even more mitzvot at once. However, I think the very existence of this concept has something important to teach us about the way that we think about concentration and focus on mitzvot. And I think this resonates very strongly with another verse that appears earlier in this week's parasha. Towards the beginning of the parasha, the Torah says in Deuteronomy 4:4, "Va'atem hadvekim b'Hashem Elokechem chayim kolchem hayom." You who have clung to the Lord your God, you who have been attached to the Lord your God, you are all alive today. In the context of the parsha itself, this is a historical statement speaking about the distinction between those who went off to worship idols, those who were interested in other gods, and those who clung to God, those who maintained a connection to God. Those are the people who survived, and those are the people who are here today. But I think that the language of Moshe's speech is very, very powerful, that this word dveikut is a very powerful word. Dveikut means to be attached, to be connected, to cling to. And chayim, life, there's a presence implied there. You who have clung to God, you are all truly alive and present in this moment today. Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, the great 19th century German rabbi and Torah commentator, says that dveikut is a connection that emerges me'omek halev, from the depths of one's heart. And he compares it to the way that this word is used at the beginning of the Torah in Sefer Bereshit, describing the connection between man and wife. It's a davak b'isho, that a man will cling to his wife. And there's a true oneness implied there, a true connection implied there, that comes from a very full emotional investment. When our performance of mitzvot is so consuming, so as to give us a real connection to God, so as to feel that we are truly clinging to God in that moment, that's a moment when we feel really alive, when we feel Chaim Kulchem Hayom, you are all alive today, based on this strong, strong connection that we have to God. And while not every mitzvah moment is necessarily like this, I think that the suggestion of this possibility, of this feeling of clinging to God, is a reason to maintain, to always keep in mind this concept of Osek B'mitzvah, Pater Min HaMitzvah, that even for a multitasker living today in the 21st century when it's possible to do so many things at once, there can be a value to doing just one thing at a time, to focusing really intently on just one mitzvah opportunity, so as to create that strong connection to God. Shabbat Shalom.